I am Shivaji Bhaskar, Faculty of Russian at the School of Foreign Languages, IGNOU. I welcome you all to this course, Basics of Russian Communication Skills, Part 1. As you know that in our previous modules, we have been discussing about the adjectives which qualify with nouns of masculine, neuter. Now, in this module, we shall be discussing about adjectives which qualifies with the feminine nouns. As we know that in this qualification of adjectives with nouns is belonging to possession or belonging and negation. Accordingly, in this case, the interrogative word for the qualifying adjectives would be kakoi. If you remember, in the previous module, the interrogative word which we have used for qualifying the adjective was kakava. So, as we are changing the gender here, the question is kakoi. Adjectives which ends with aya, they would change into o e kratki. Now, let us learn how the ending of these adjectives would change according to the agreement between the adjective and the noun. Please pay attention to the example. Отец новой студентки работает на заводе. So, отец новой студентки. So, the новая студентка changes into новой студентки работает на заводе. Or, to understand it more clearly, please pay attention to the second example. На уроке нет новой студентки. So, you have seen the possession as well as the negation. In both the cases, the adjective ending is changing into o e kratki. The first one, possession, отец новой студентки работает на заводе. So, отец кого? Отец новой студентки. And in the second one, на уроке нет новой студентки. На уроке кого нет? Студентки нет. Новой студентки нет на уроке. So, we have understood with these two examples that how in case of possession, belonging and having the question kavo along with an adjective ending in aya changes into o e kratki when we have the question kakoi. So, I hope you understood the concept of the grammar here very well. Now, let us go ahead and pay attention to a few more new adjective endings which is agreeing to the noun. So, we are talking about nouns of the feminine gender here, and that is why if you pay attention to the endings of the adjectives, both of them are qualifying, such as большая фабрика. So, the adjective ending is aya, большая, and the noun ending is a, fabrika. So, the noun is of feminine gender, likewise the adjective endings also is in agreement. But whenever we have the question of possession, belonging or the negation, it should change into o e kratki and the noun ending would change into e. How do we do that? Let us see. Большая фабрика changes into большой фабрике. Молодая женщина changes into молодой женщине. Любимая страна changes into любимой страны. Маленькая улица changes into маленькой улицы. Тихая река changes into тихой реке. Строгая преподавательница changes into строгой преподавательницы. So, here you have seen that how the ending of the adjectives and nouns in feminine gender in nominative are changing as far as the requirement of this case, where we are having the question of kavo and chivo. All right. Now, let us go ahead and pay attention to a new concept, the adjectives endings in ya, because we have certain nouns and adjectives where the nouns are ending with a or ya. Likewise, in adjective endings there are certain adjective which ends with aya or yaya. So, in this case we have certain adjectives which are of yaya ending, they would change into ye e kratki. Now, let us learn what are such words or adjectives we have. For example, качество сильной рубашки неплохое. So, качество чего? Качество сильной рубашки неплохое. Or у меня нет сильной рубашки. In both the cases, you can see the possession качество чего, качество сильной рубашки неплохое. So, here сильная рубашка changes into сильной рубашки. Whereas in the second one, у меня нет чего, у меня нет сильной рубашки. Что у меня нет? У меня сильной рубашки нет. So, like this you can also make your sentences. That is why сильная changes into сильней. At the end you have changed the ending from yaya into ye e kratki. Similarly, if you pay attention to certain other combination of adjective and nouns, like Sivadshnyaya Gaziyata changes into Sivadshnyayei Gaziyatu. Sivadnyaya Деревная, соседняя деревная changes into соседной деревни. And accordingly, последняя квартира changes into последней квартире. So, you can also change the endings of the adjectives and nouns in agreement while using kavo chivo, and you can see the results. Okay. Now, let us go ahead and pay attention to the activity. Please pay attention to the model. Brat in bracket новая, брат новая, студентки учатся в авиационном институте. Брат кого? Брат новой студентки учится в авиационном институте. Accordingly, here we have seen the possession брат кого? Брат новая студентка changes into новой студентки. Accordingly, we have в киоске нет вчерашняя газета. В киоске нет вчерашней газеты. So, вчерашняя changes into вчерашней газеты. So, with the help of this concept, you can also solve rest of the exercise and see the progress. Now, let us go ahead and pay attention to some of the important aspects. Here, please pay attention to the model. На столе есть красная ручка. Now, we will use the нет. Нет, so that we can understand the relation between the words, adjectives, and after putting нет, what kind of change we see in the adjective endings and the noun endings. У Саши есть новое пальто. У Саши нет нового пальто. Because masculine gender and neuter gender, they act accordingly. And if you pay attention to the model, на столе есть красная ручка, на столе нет красной ручки. В доме есть большой холодильник, в доме нет большого холодильника. So, likewise, you can solve the exercise and see the results. Now, we will use the correct interrogative word for the underlined adjectives. In this model, please pay attention. We have used the sentence в комнате нет нового студента. Кого нет в комнате? Нового студента нет в комнате. Какого студента нет в комнате? Нового. So, we are using the question какого студента нет в комнате. So, for какого, we will use it with нового студента нет в комнате. So, here we are actually using the question какого because we are making an interrogative word out of the sentence. Okay, now let us go ahead and pay attention to a few more sentences. В магазине нет русского учебника. So русский учебник changes into русского учебника. В киоске нет последнего журнала. And на столе нет английской газеты. So according to the gender, if it is a masculine or neuter, какого, and if it is feminine, какой. So here русский учебник какого учебника нет в магазине русского. So like this you can also solve the exercise properly. Okay, now let's go ahead and pay attention to another important aspect. Adjectives with numerals and comparative form of adjectives. In order to understand that, we will see that what kind of grammar rule we apply. So now let's go ahead. In Russian, we have adjectives which can be used with numerals and comparative forms. They change their endings depending upon the gender of noun. To understand this fully, we will take a small exercise. For example, adjectives after numerals dva, tri, четыре. If we have any noun adjective of masculine or neuter, it would be dva, tri, четыре. If we have anything which belongs to the feminine gender, it would be две, три, четыре. Now let's learn how to do it. For example, if we have у меня есть 3 новые книги, у брата есть 2 новых карандаша, на столе лежит 4 новых письма. So here, whenever we are using numerals, like in the first one, у меня есть 3. So 3, we have книги. So in very simple manner, 3 новые книги. But whenever we are using у брата есть 2 новых карандаша. Карандаш changes into карандаша. У брата есть чего? У брата есть новых карандаша. Сколько? 2. На столе лежит 4 новых письма. Because письмо and карандаш, both of them belong to the neuter and the masculine gender. That is why after dva or chittiri, it's novik. Whereas in the case of kniga, which is feminine gender, we are using у меня есть 3 новые книги. So there is no change. So we will keep it in mind and doing it. So we have learned with the examples у меня есть 3 новые книги, because the feminine gender, that is why новые книги. However, in case of masculine and neuter, novik karandasha and chittiri novik pisma changes as per the rules of the grammar for Russian. Thus, we see that if adjectives novi qualifies with a feminine noun, it takes the form of novie. But when the same adjective qualifies a masculine or a neuter, it takes the form of novik. So this is same, which is also true for other adjectives. Let's see how. Please pay attention to the model. На столе стоят 2. As soon as we know it is 2, not 2, it is a clear indication that the noun is of feminine gender. So the noun is vazа and the adjective is красивая ваза. But since we are talking about numerals, so 2 красивые вазы. Why? Because in feminine gender, whenever we are using numerals, the adjectives ending, the noun ending does not change. На столе стоят 2 красивые вазы. Had it been any masculine or neuter, it would have been 2 красивых карандаша. But in this case, it does not change. So you have to pay attention accordingly and do the corrections and do the exercise completely. Okay, now let's go ahead and pay attention to a few more exercises. На столе 3. So here we have книга in plural form 3 книги. 3 хорошие книги. В комнате есть 2 वर्षीय shkafa. So shkaf masculine gender, that is why dva balshik shkafa. Yashike yes chitiri vajne pismo. So chitiri vajnak pisma. So you would change them accordingly. Alright, now let's go ahead, and now we shall be discussing about the types of pronouns and their forms. So pronouns, as we know, there are different kind of pronouns we use to determine the nouns. So there are personal pronouns, demonstrative pronouns, possessive pronouns and reflexive pronouns. Personal pronouns are such pronouns such as, like we have the question kto, kavonia and ukavo. Kto, it is in nominative. So kto, ya, ti, on, ana, ano. Then we have mui, we and ani. Whenever we are changing into kavo, kavoniat, ukavo, then we have certain different style. Ya changes into minianiat, uminia, chibianiat, uchibia, yuvoniat, ioniat, univo, unio, nas, nasniat, unas, vas, vasniat, uvas. For ani, ik, ikniat, unik. So according to the different categories, like we have just understood and learned in the module, from nominative to this kavoniat, ukavo, etc., we change the personal pronouns accordingly. As you know, the meaning of these personal pronouns is ya means I, ti means you, singular, on means he, ana means she. Then we know me means we means you, plural, and ani means they. So accordingly, you can also change these pronouns and use them accordingly. Okay, now we will go ahead and pay attention to a few more important aspects. Dnyom abichna minia niyat doma. Dnyom abichna minia niyat doma. So here in place of ya, we have replaced it with minia. Why? Because we are using the negation niyat. Kavoniat, minianiat, kavoniat, yuvoniat, kavoniat, ioniat, kavoniat, vasniat, kavoniat, nasniat, kavoniat, ikniat. Accordingly, we can also change. Here we have minianiat, which means I. Сегодня у меня выходной день. Сегодня у меня выходной день. So I has been changed into меня. Сегодня у меня выходной день, which means today I have a day off or simply a holiday. Выходной день is literally translated as holiday. Demonstrative pronouns, which qualifies nouns which indicates possession, belonging, negation. So these are certain nouns such as etat changes into etava, tot changes into tavo, eta changes into etai, ta changes into toi, neuter eta changes into etava, to changes into tavo. Why? Because masculine and neuter, they have similar endings. The only difference we see is for the feminine. That is why if you look carefully, etat and eta in masculine and in neuter, they are having the same endings, whereas in feminine we have used eta, which ends with a, changes into etai, o e kratki. So this is the basic principle which we use in our grammar rule as far as we use the demonstrative pronouns. Now we will go ahead and pay attention to this important aspect with the help of few examples like Liuji этого дома очень дружная. Liuji этого дома. So we are demonstrating that this particular house, people of this particular house are very friendly. Люди этого дома очень дружные. Студенты того общежития. So from that context we are saying студенты того общежития уже уехали. The students of that particular hostel have already gone. Ученики этой группы хорошо учатся. So ученики, the people or the students of this particular group, they study well. So accordingly, we make many more sentences based on the demonstrative pronouns while using etat, eta and eta. So, you have to be very careful while making these sentences, while using the demonstrative pronouns, the relationship between the nouns, adjectives and other aspects of the sentences while doing it. In this particular case, the interrogative word is kakavo. For demonstrating pronoun qualifying masculine singular and neuter singular nouns, we use the question kakavo, and kakoi for feminine singular nouns, like we have just learned in this module. So, to understand it more clearly, we have activity. Pay attention to the model. U Ana есть красный шарф. So, Ana in the personal pronoun changes into у нее. У нее есть красный шарф. And accordingly, мой, этот человек, он, это, они, they would also take a different form as per the context rules of the grammar which we have learned previously. So, for example, the first one, у мой changes into нас. У нас скоро каникулы. У этого человека есть машина. У него есть синая ручка. У нее, у этой девушки есть сестра. And the fifth one is у них нет брата. So, this style you can follow and change the endings of the adjectives and nouns. Accordingly, possessive pronouns which qualify nouns indicating possession, belonging, negation in masculine, neuter and feminine. So, these possessive pronouns like moi, toi, nash, vash, ik changes accordingly. So, moi means my, toi means yours, nash means ours, vash means yours and ik means theirs. Moi, maivo, toi, tvoevo. For neuter, mayo, maevo, tvoyo, tvoevo, and for feminine, maya, maye, tvoya, tvoye. We will go ahead and understand a few more such pronouns in a clear manner. So, yivo changes into yivo, iyo changes into iyo, yivo changes into yivo, and largely they remain same. But however, nash, vash, ik changes, nash, nasheva, vash, vasheva. For feminine, it would be nashai, vashai, and ik remains same throughout for all the genders. So, this is largely a concept which we wanted to discuss with you all, so that you understand the role of these pronouns, whether they are personal pronouns, demonstrative, etc. Now, we will go ahead and pay attention to a few more new words, expressions with the help of these sentences. Друг моего брата сидит в другой комнате. Студенты вашего общежития сейчас играют на стадионе. Люди нашей страны любят мир. Свой changes into своего, свое changes into своего, but своя changes into своей. Accordingly, if we pay attention to the last three sentences, these are он любит читать историю своего народа. So, история changes into историю. История чего? История своего народа. Он долго думал о словах своего письма. And the third one is он отлично знает географию своей страны. So, largely in this context, whenever we are using the expressions, we can see that some of the expressions are very clear, indicating the possession, indicating the belonging, indicating the negation. And with the help of such sentences, we can understand the relationship between the adjectives and the nouns and the agreement between their endings. Now, we will go ahead and pay attention to the activity. With the help of this model, if you pay attention, the sentence is Drug, Tvoi, Brata, Plokha, Uchitsa. So, Drug Kahvo, Drug Toiva Brata, Plokha Uchitsa. Accordingly, as per the gender, you can also change them as we have learned. Now, we shall go ahead and pay attention to a few more exercises. Let us pay attention to the model. У мой брат есть русский друг. So, у кого? У моего брата есть русский друг. So, according to the gender, in this case masculine, we have changed мой брат into моего брата. Had it been any other gender, we would have followed the rule of the grammar of the Russian accordingly. For example, if we say у нашей соседки есть дождь или у новой студентки есть компьютер. Here we have used two examples of the feminine gender and solved. So, you may please also follow the rules as we have taught in this module. Now, let us go ahead and pay attention to another activity while using the model. Na ekskursije bili 3 vaši bivšie studentki. As we know that when we use numerals, the rule of the grammar for feminine gender is different. So, it would be na ekskursiji bili 3 vaši bivšie studentki. It would be na ekskursiji bili 3 vaši bivšie studentki. There is no change as per the rule of the grammar. Had it been masculine or neuter, we would have changed it like наших бывших. So, accordingly, в комнате сидит 2 наших хорошие студента. So, it would be в комнате сидит 2 наших хороших студента, because it is of masculine gender. That is why we have changed it into 2 наших хороших студента. Alright, now let us go ahead and pay attention to a few more sentences. На столе лежит 4 твоих старых письма. В аудитории были 3 наши близкие друга. So, we know друг is masculine singular. Accordingly, наши близкие will change into наших близких. And likewise, as per the gender, you can also make changes. Now, let us go ahead and understand it with a few more examples. One thing which we have to remember is that the above mentioned singular forms of noun, pronoun and adjective are also used after prepositions denoting place, and for that we have a expression in Russian which is known as где. Где means where, like у кого, like у, около, напротив, мимо, внутри, вокруг, and also after preposition indicating directions like откуда, куда, and like is, от, с, со, до. For example, я увидел друга у большого театра. I saw the friend at the Большой theater. Около нашего нового дома есть хороший парк. So, around our new house, there is a good park. And accordingly, он долго ждал своего друга напротив центрального рынка. He was waiting for his friend opposite the central market. Туристы шли мимо Национального музея. Tourists walk past the National Museum. Внутри нашей библиотеки есть хорошая столовая. There is a good canteen inside our library. So, all these kind of cases you can also use in order to understand this important aspect of the Russian grammar, where we are talking about the possession, belonging or negation with the help of personal pronouns, with the help of demonstrative pronouns, with the help of adjective endings and noun endings in masculine, neuter or in feminine gender. Let us have a few more examples like вокруг. Вокруг этого высокого здания есть парк. There is a park around this tall building. Сегодня она ушла рано из университета. So the question is, откуда она ушла рано? Из университета. Сегодня он получил письмо от своего русского друга. От кого? От своего русского друга. Today he received a letter from his Russian friend. Он взял эту книгу с полкой. Откуда он взял? С полкой он взял эту книгу. От университета до студенческого общежития почти 1 километр. Куда? It is almost 1 kilometer from the university to the students' hostel. So the direction is куда. And accordingly, what we have learned in this module, we shall change the endings of the adjectives, nouns, and using all these kind of important aspects of the Russian grammar in order to express the exact meaning of the sentence. So, I hope that all of you have understood clearly the relationship between the adjective endings and the noun endings, especially when we are talking about possession, belonging and negation. With the help of certain examples of the pronouns, we have learned about the relationship between these. We have also seen there are some exceptions in Russian with examples, and in our upcoming module we shall be discussing about the concept of the Russian grammar which is known as который. Thank you.